It's me, Lucy, aka the Social Justice Doula, your favorite gender studies professor who lives on the internet. And I am back, and I want to talk about where we spend a lot of time, non-profit spaces. And I want to talk about what happens when our trauma brings us to our nonprofit work. But when we get to the nonprofit work, what happens when we don't do the work of resolving our trauma? So, as many of you know, I am a consultant and I'm a coach. I'm an anti-racist feminist coach, and I work with individuals and organizations, and I help them operationalize their anti-racism. And I am also a social worker by trade. And usually when people who go into the helping field, we are usually people who are deeply impacted, most impacted by the work that we're doing. So we know that, we see that people who are recovering addicts will go into drug treatment work. We know that formerly houseless people will assist folks experiencing houselessness, and you name it, right? So it is usually our trauma, it is usually the thing that we suffered as children or something that deeply impacted our family of origin that leads us to our nonprofit work. Okay, great. However, what happens when a whole bunch of people who have been relegated to the margins, who have a lot of trauma, come into a nonprofit space to work with people who are themselves impacted, who are experiencing many of the things that we ourselves have experienced, and we have not done the work, the healing work, to put enough distance between us and that trauma. And then what happens is we bring all of that trauma to work, and then there's just the regular trauma of working at a nonprofit that comes up. This is something that we need to think about, and we need to talk about, and we need to take seriously, because what I'm seeing is that good teams that could be more effective, teams that could get more work done, teams that could really show up for the communities that they say they want to show up, that work is being hindered because staff and people are just really so caught up in their personal stories, and we're unable to do good collective work. And so your trauma might have brought you to the movement, might have brought you to your nonprofit work, might have brought you to a helping profession. But if you do not do the work to resolve that trauma, it's going to burn you out. And what's going to end up happening, you yourself are going to become toxic. You yourself are going to become unproductive in the space because of the work that you're doing. So what did I mean about not bringing your trauma to the work? Like literally, something I learned in social work school, you shouldn't trust, if you are going to a social worker, you're going to a therapist, I wouldn't go to a therapist who outwardly admitted that they themselves don't go to therapy. Because what are you doing with all of the information that you're receiving? Where are you putting that? And so if therapy is good enough for me, the therapist have to be like, yeah, if it's good enough for my client, it has to be good enough for me. If my client can submit to this, I can. And also too, it's just really good practice. It's really good hygiene, because you don't want a therapist who's gonna project their stuff onto you. You don't want a therapist who starts to over-identify with you and your issues, because all of a sudden they stop treating you, they stop listening to you, and they're treating themselves, or they're treating their mom, or they're treating their partner that they could not save. And so this is why it's a good ethical practice to just be in a practice of checking in with yourself and doing the hygiene around, where am I in my trauma? Am I too triggered? Am I too traumatized? Am I the right kind of person to be on this case? Am I the right kind of person to hold space for this person, this, that, and the third? Because it's getting in the way of the work. And so what happens is regular staff meetings can't happen because everyone is so charged, everyone is so in their feelings, like literally the business of work, what you're there to do cannot get done because everyone is in their space. And this is going to be an impediment. It's not good for us. It's not good for the long term. And also what ends up happening, especially for professionals of color, what happens is when you're bringing all your trauma and stuff to work and it gets unchecked, that leads to disciplinary issues. That leads to whatever, because guess what? There is a stigma around being a Black, being a woman, being a femme, and being difficult. Even if you have good, legitimate reasons for being difficult, but like we know that like that is a thing, that is a problem in the workspace. Like the workspace could barely tolerate difference, so let alone a person having really big emotional feelings. And also, we have to be honest, the executive director, supervisors, and managers, a lot of them are not equipped to hold space for you and to help manage your feelings and your big stuff. So unfortunately, like, this is a conundrum. We spend a lot of time at work, and of course we are holistic people. We have lives outside of work, but the things that are going on outside of work, we can't really bring it into work because there is no space, there is no container, and these people are not that invested in our personal development to help us move us along within our workplace and our trauma. So I guess if I could offer an intervention, it's like we have to go to therapy. If we can't afford individual therapy, can we try to get into group work, do some kind of group work? Does that offer any discount? Can we engage in other things? Can we do yoga? Can we take long walks? Can we journal? What's the thing that we can do? Where can we go to put our stuff at least on the shelf so that we can get our work done, and so that we don't end up becoming a hindrance or problematic at work? And I know some people might be thinking like, well, why this overemphasis on work, and I am more than just a worker. To that, I totally 150% agree. We are more than our work, and I am more than just a worker. However, in order to survive in this violent capitalist society, we have to work somewhere. And if you have to work somewhere, there is a level of conformity that is required of you, period, point blank, bottom line. I don't care where you work. I personally do not believe revolutionary organizations have a 501c3 designation. So by that once you enter in a space that has that kind of tax designation, it requires something of you. Your roles, your responsibility, the job you applied for, it requires something of you. Now, it is my goal, it is my wish that we all can work somewhere where we're not being exploited, where we're not being disrespected, and that we feel as if we could bring most of ourselves to work. And at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility on our part. What do we need to do? What are the things that we need to keep to ourselves or keep at bay? Because if it comes into the workspace, it will be used to harm us. It will be used to push us out of the space. And also, we're young. If we're gonna work the next 30, 40, 50 years, what do we need to do to protect ourselves so that we can do this work, so that we can take care of ourselves and we don't become precarious in this violent capitalist society? And so I just think this is a real question, a real conversation we need to have, and we need to take it seriously about, like, trauma might have brought us to our work, but we cannot afford not to resolve our trauma while we're doing this work. Now, healing is not a destination. I'm not saying that you're gonna put in the address to healing in your Uber, in your Lyft app, and then you're gonna do the thing and you're gonna arrive. No, fam, it doesn't work like that. I know it doesn't work like that. But however, we do have to do the work of unpacking and unpeeling what we need to do so that we can show up for the people that we say that we care about. Because guess what? Here's what I know to be true. People who are low-income people who are relegated to the margins, deserve and are worthy of having the best advocates. If their advocates are all constantly falling apart, constantly can't show up, constantly being unmoored and destabilized while they're trying to advocate for other people, that's not helpful. That's not helpful. So our people need the best kind of advocates, the best kind of people working on their behalfs, and we cannot be our best if we are mired in our own stuff. And we can't numb, we can't distract, we can't aggressively avoid the work that we need to do, because what ends up happening, you go into an organization, it's a beautiful organization, you start out loving your job, you have a good attitude about it, and then all of a sudden, you become toxic, you become the person that no one wants to be around, and you yourself start to harm your clients, start to harm the very people who you care about and who you came into this field for. So it's a negative feedback loop, and we stop that feedback loop by taking personal responsibility and really taking seriously what does it mean to take care of ourselves, what does it mean to be mindful, what does it mean to be an ethical nonprofit professional, so that when we enter in the space, we're not harming our colleagues and we're not harming the people who we give services to. This is a trend that I'm seeing happening a lot, where people think the workplace is the place that they're supposed to work their stuff out. No, boo, it's not the place. Therapy is the place, your home is the place, journaling is the place, maybe with your booze is the place, your friends and your family, but your colleagues and your clients are not the containers that can receive your trauma. They're not. They are not, and they cannot be, and that's harmful, and that's not okay. And so when you have a problematic social worker who's constantly triggered, who's projecting their shit onto their client, who does the client have to go to complain to and to talk about? And do they even have the language to even explain the nuances of what's going on? They might feel like something is off, they might feel like something is wrong, but like, can they crystallize it in such a way that the powers that be in a nonprofit can really understand? So again, it takes a lot of hard work and responsibility to actively be in helping fields, to actively be in a nonprofit space, and we have to ask ourselves, what's our relationship to what's going on to us, and to ensure that it's not leaking or hemorrhaging into our interactions with our people. It matters. How you're showing up matters, and people notice it. So that's all I have. I would love to hear questions, comments, concerns, pushback. Let me know, like, how are we thinking about work? How are we showing up to work? And what are some tools, some strategies and interventions are you using to do your own mental health hygiene to ensure that you're not leaking your trauma and you're not hemorrhaging your trauma at work? Can't wait to hear what you have to say about this video. Thank you.